Voters are losing trust in the councils. Why should they believe the insurgent parties will deliver real local change rather than just simply replicate all of the problems that persist now?
That sounds like a very world-weary question, if I may say. Is that because you're thinking it's just going to all be more of the same?
Well, it's many things, isn't it? Every day we traverse the potholes that within the councils, you get reminded how services are deteriorating, and then you see how much is spent on executive remuneration compared to other sectors, and it goes on, and then running up debts like central government, and it's just very wearisome. So we're hoping, to see real change come from these insurgent parties if the result next week comes in as expected. OK, well, look, Zia, let's kick off with you. And if you could answer at the same time this man at the front, his point about vetting, because also you've had issues with your candidates as well.
Yeah, so the first thing to say about local councils, and I've spent a lot of time in town halls across the country, in reform-controlled councils, north of 70% of council budgets are statutory, meaning that they are mandated by central government. The vast majority of that, whether we like it or not a single councillor of any colour or stripes in this country can make any decisions about who gets that social care, the parameters upon which it's delivered. So first of all, we've got to be clear about that. And Reform have already talked about how we need to reform social care, we need to reform welfare payments, because frankly, it is a freight train, accelerating towards the cliffs to which the whole economy is attached. So that's the first point to make, right? But councils do have power that is localised. You mentioned potholes. I personally went through, the numbers in a lot of these councils, and what you'd find is, you're told that all this money's been allocated for potholes. The reality is that money is not ring-fenced, and so what ends up happening in reality, and it's really important that everybody understands this, the majority of that money in most councils never makes it to fixing the roads.
Well, that seems to be the case, Zia.
It is diverted away to social care.
And that seems to be the case with one of your councils. Hang on, Zia. It seems to be the case with one of your councils. Tell me if this is not right, but this is according to a Freedom of Information request prompted by Labour, that since you mentioned potholes, pothole spending in North Warwickshire under Reform has dropped by more than 50%. Is that right?
Well, the first point to make is judging a council by what the spending in absolute pounds is not the correct measure. The correct measure is to determine the quality,
People want to know. Potholes come up every week.
Fiona, with respect. Fiona, with respect.
Is it true? Is that council spending 50% less on potholes?
Fiona, with respect.
Well, with respect, I'm asking you that question.
If you ran a business on the basis of, I want my department to spend as much money as possible, and that's all I judge them on, then your business would not last very long.
Okay.
One of the big problems we have in this country right now is a huge amount of money is wasted. We have championed at Reform more efficient ways of utilising money that is allocated to potholes to the degree it's actually spent on fixing roads. The truth of the matter is the contracts that are dished out by councils to contractors to supposedly fix potholes invariably have no quality component to them whatsoever, have no guarantee attached to them whatsoever. That stands in stark contrast to many countries that are great at this, countries like the United Arab Emirates, for example. So I've overseen personally a lot of our initiatives on this, and I'm very proud of that.
Zia, I'm just going to give it one more go. Has pothole spending in North Warwickshire under Reform dropped by more than half?
Well, I'm not across that precise bit of detail. I will tell you this. No party who controls councils in this country has been more successsul in fixing potholes than Reform. That we've already published that information.
OK. Would you like to listen? I'll come around the question, but since you asked this question about vetting, and also we've talked about the Green candidates, isn't all parties have problems with vetting? I think it's worth pointing that out. But since we've got you here, Zia, and the question was about insurgent parties, which Reform is one. So you've got a candidate in Bexley who shared a photo online with a quote that Islam was the religion of rape, incest and paedophilia. Her name is Caroline Panetta. Is she still standing?
She won't be standing, but I want to make this point too.
She's been suspended then?
She will not be standing. And I want to make this point, because I was chairman of the party. It's a start-up party, right? And I set up the vetting process. I'm very proud of that. We have vetted north of 9,000 candidates. We're standing 5,500 plus candidates in the space of 2 years, unprecedented in British political history. If I sat here and told you that our vetting process was perfect, you'd know that could not be possible. I'm going to be very honest with you. It's obviously not perfect, but it is north of 99.9% accurate. And to the degree that slumps slip through the net, we act on it decisively. But I want to make a few points here, that it's perfectly legitimate, Fiona, for you to hold reform to account.
If you don't
yeah,
mind.
hold us to account for reform candidates. But what's interesting is nobody seems to be interested in any of the bad eggs and bad apples in other parties. The Tories have had to stand down more candidates
talked
than
about
us.
the Greens.
The
this
Tories,
evening.
the Tories have stood down more candidates than us as a result of misdemeanours. A Tory candidate just last week threatened to murder a high-profile celebrity's mother, barely covered, if at all, in the media. So look, is our vetting process perfect? No, no vetting process is. But to stand 5,500 candidates in the space of 2 years and to have only a small handful that sadly did slip through the net, which we have acted upon, I'm very proud of that.
OK. Since the question about insurgent parties, Rachel, let me come to you. So the question is, why should voters believe that insurgent parties will deliver real local change rather than simply replicate the same problems?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I love co-leading a council, a district council in Sussex, and we have been able to make a difference for our communities and for nature. And I know, I can tell you that what you get when you vote Green are local, very, very hard-working councillors who are absolutely committed to two vested interests, and that's people and planet, and nothing beyond. We don't have donations from other big corporates. We don't have any other interests to look after. I can tell you about things that Greens have delivered where they're leading councils across the country. There's a huge push to deliver as much affordable and social housing as possible. There's lots of things with investment in local businesses, brilliant local procurement strategies, things to make a difference. We've done things like double council tax on second and empty homes so that we can give more people council tax relief. But you're right in that what we can't do is change the system. And I always say to people who are studying to be a councillor, I say you can move the needle on the dial in so many ways, and you can always make a decision, work for more people in communities and work better for nature. But we do bang our heads against a brick wall of government legislation. What's great is that being in those councillor positions and running councils helps us understand what needs to change. And a lot of the time, it is simply that the system, so taking housing, you cannot actually solve the housing crisis in the current planning system because it begins and ends with profit. Developer profit is protected in this system. We need to have council housing at scale, and that will take a change of government legislation. Councils need funding at scale. I mean, hilarious to hear you talk about social care when Reform threatened to close a care home in Lancaster to make savings. The problem is that the government has been defunding councils for years. Reform will say, we'll make savings, they're all inefficient. And then time and time again, you come in, you take power, you can't find any savings, and you put the council tax up. That's what's happening when some of them are left. There were 57 Reform councillors took over Kent, there's only 48 left. They drop like flies because they're not local, and they're not working hard, and they don't care about their local community.
Right. I'm going to come to you in a minute. Daisy, let me come to you, because the Lib Dem record on local council, so let's have a look. Last year, Lib Dem in Windsor and Maidenhead, you'll all know this, of course, because you live here, council tax increased 9%. This year, 7.5%. And Lib Dem-run English councils imposed, on average, the highest council tax rises of all the parties. Do you stand by that record?
So, Liberal Democrats have had huge success in local elections over the last few years, and in many places we've taken over control of councils from the Conservatives, who left behind them an awful mess. If you look at places like Woking, where the council was almost gone bankrupt, we've been clearing up the mess left behind by the Conservatives in many council places. And unfortunately, councils don't really have many ways of raising money to pay for services. But Liberal Democrats in local government,
9%.
Liberal Democrats in local government protect services against the odds. What I would say, though, to Charles, who asked the question, I think you used the word weary. And I think that kind of sums up how everybody feels at the moment. Everybody feels like we're working harder and harder, paying more and more in tax, and getting less and less from the state and from our local councils. And the fundamental problem, the reason why we feel like that, is because we're not growing the economy. And that is why we Liberal Democrats have repeatedly said if we can get a better trading deal relationship with Europe, we can actually grow our economy faster, and then we can grow the size of the pie. But in terms of why you should vote for Liberal Democrats at a local level, Liberal Democrats have protected services against the odds. We've been investing in community facilities and leisure centres, and we've been cleaning up the mess left by the Conservatives before us in many councils around the country.
Woman in the black short-sleeve top, yeah.
My point is to Zia. I work in the social care sector. I work with old people as a care worker. And I was wondering, we're overstretched most of the time. A lot of us are working 15 to 16-hour days. And I'm wondering where you think this overspending is going, because we're overstretched.
All right, I'm going to get around the rest of the panel as well, if you'll forgive me. Yes, man there in the blue sweater and blue shirt.
I think one of the problems is we're devoid of trust in our leadership. You've all got something different, but nobody's talking together. We've got big problems in this country, but actually I'm voting for those that are going to solve the SEND crisis that our family goes through. Not just potholes, it's easy to say potholes. Education system, 66% of parents actually are saying that their schools are failing. So we need a combined thinking. We've got no leadership. You're all leaders, yet between you, there is massive divides. It's no wonder there's division in this country, and why we all sit here, I'll mark anybody, because it will just be the same. We need to bring this country together if we're going to march forward.
Bring this country together, Emma. I mean, it's not, polls are polls, but if the polls are to be believed, and of course we'll find out next week, it is not looking good for Labour, is it?
Well, look, we're going to fight for every vote. We're out there campaigning day in, day out. But what I would say to the gentleman that asked the question is that I've seen Labour councils across England protect local services in the face of Tory austerity. When the Tories were in power, I've seen Labour local councils protect children's centres, which was an initiative of our previous government, protect libraries, invest in our green spaces. And actually, on the ballot paper next Thursday in England is the who you want to run your local council. And I think Labour councils have got a great record. You asked about the other parties. Nigel Farage said when they took over Worcestershire Council, where they did put council tax up by 9% and cut local services, he said he wished they hadn't bothered. I mean, that is quite extraordinary. What contempt for local government. I'm sorry, Rachel, you say the Greens run local councils well. In Brighton, when the Greens were running the local council there, they had the worst recycling rates in the country, which is quite extraordinary given that the Green Party is supposed to care about the environment. So I would urge people to look at what your local councils and local councillors are doing and judge them on their merits. And I've seen fantastic Labour local councils across the country delivering really good local services for people.
So, Victoria, it's not looking great for Labour. It's looking pretty terrible for you guys as well.
Well, I want to acknowledge what Charles said, which is that everyone is feeling weary at the moment. As Daisy said, I think we're all feeling poorer. We are seeing our national and public services feel more and more creaky. And we have, I'm afraid, in the insurgent parties, people who are making promises that they cannot hope to keep. Reform, I have a Reform County Council in Lincolnshire. They were voted in last year. They promised to cut out waste and lower council tax. This year they're increasing council tax. And on the matter of SEND, when DFE, the Department for Education, wrote to Lincolnshire County Council asking whether they would like to apply for funding to set up a new SEND school in our great county, vast rural county. We desperately need more SEND facilities. Reform seemed to have either ignored the letter or not got back to the department in time, and that funding has now gone to Kent. So there are very real life implications for the votes that you're all making, if you're in areas that are voting next week, for the future of your local area. And what I will say, I want to be positive, because I think part of the problem of politics is people knocking each other. I'm going to be positive. In Kemi Badenoch, she has travelled the length and breadth of this country in a way no other political leader is doing. She is speaking.
I'm not sure that's quite right. I'm pretty sure all the party leaders are doing that at the moment.
I'm afraid afraid, Daisy, I'm not seeing the same level of movement around. Kemi is speaking to people across the United Kingdom. We are setting out our plans to say, look, there are, as has already been referenced, there are some really big issues facing our country. We are the only party doing that very deep thinking about what we need to do. Okay. For example, to control welfare spending, to help cut your taxes, to help raise funding for defence spending.
Okay, but the question's about local councils. Obviously, none of those things are in the gift of local councils.
But we are part of a Conservative team, and I know there are very, very good examples of Conservative councils up and down the country, including doing fantastic work on potholes, and we know that Conservative councils have the lowest average Band-D council tax of all councils
and many
in
have
England.
huge amounts of debt and have almost bankrupted their councils.
That's
You're
not
in power,
correct.
Victoria. You slash local government financing. I mean, it's quite extraordinary that you sit there and talk about your teams. We had austerity for so many years under the Conservative government. And that's why we've got a problem with potholes. That's why we've got...
Why did we have that? Because in 2010, the last Labour government bankrupted this country, left the note saying there is no money left, and we had to take the tough decisions needed to make up for that. Unfortunately, this government is doing exactly the same.
Let me take another question.